Welcome to the Foreman Coaching Channel, where we talk about being a foreman in the construction industry. I hope to turn you into a bomb foreman and show you some things you may not know, show you some tips that will help you improve your career and your track to being a bomb foreman. Today I wanted to talk about leadership, because leadership is a very interesting conversation. It comes into play when you're being a foreman, right? Your leadership skills are what count the most. Unfortunately, being a great journeyman is not what counts most when you're being a foreman. Being a great journeyman does not count when being a foreman. Oh, I just hurt some people's feelings, I think, out there. But it is true. It is true. The problem is that you're not installing anymore. And it can actually serve as a weakness if you're judging other people through the lens of your productivity rates. You will not have the patience for a slow and steady worker if you're a turn and burn type of journeyman, when a slow and steady worker might be what you need. We have lots of slow and steady workers that work for my company, and they are fantastic for doing OCal rigid concentric bend, type jobs where you're not rocking that stuff in. You need to take your time and do it right. We have lots of foremen that do control terminations for large PLC projects where there might be 100,000 terminations. You are not slopping and rocking that stuff in. You need to be slow and controlled, okay? So just because you think you're the bomb because you can run 1,000 feet of pipe in a day means nothing when it comes to being a great foreman. Being a great foreman requires great leadership skills, and leadership skills don't have a great tight definition, okay? Because the problem is you can't define it as tightly as you might like to, because it's a constantly evolving thing, because you're leading people. People come in all shapes and sizes and mindsets, and generally the no one size fits all, okay? Acknowledge that. It's a reality, okay? There are different kind of foreman approaches. There's different kind of leadership approaches that work equally well. The jerk foreman is an approach. We all know the jerk foreman. The nice guy foreman is an approach that can work well. The important thing is understanding the pros and cons of your approach and understanding what you're doing and how you're choosing to lead, okay? There are some common skills. Both the nice guy foreman and the jerk foreman both need to be paying attention to the schedule, looking ahead, knowing what's coming down the pipe. They both need to understand, in relation to that schedule, what the work is that's coming down the pipe. They both need to understand the tools and materials that they're going to need to have when that work comes. And if they're really smart, they'll have a backup plan just in case things don't go the way the schedule says and something different comes up and they need to be ready. Okay, so both those foremen need to have those things at the minimum, but then it comes down to how do you communicate that plan to the people that are working for you. That's the communication element, right? It's the communication element of leadership that ultimately determines whether you're the jerk foreman or the nice guy foreman. Okay, now, both those types of foremen have a close place in my heart. You don't just throw out the jerk foreman because he's a jerk. There is a place for the jerk foreman. The jerk foreman has a great place with employees that will tend to overstay their welcome at the lunch table, overstay their welcome at the break table, show up late, leave early, work too slow. Okay, that is a real thing in the industry. Obviously, if everybody that came out to work for you just crushed it, then you wouldn't have any, we'd all just be making tons of money and this channel wouldn't exist. But being an effective leader when you have employees like that suits the jerk foreman, okay? Because he has no problem, or she has no problem calling people out and breathing down their neck and watching that installation. So I've got a jerk foreman that works for our company. He is fantastic. For example, let me tell you about a job that he ran for us. This was a couple years ago. It was a tower. It was about 8 stories, and we were installing some fire alarm, access control, some remodels on every floor of this building. Pretty big job for us. I think we had about 10 people working for us at the peak of it. And I was, once a week, I was walking the tower with my camera phone. I was taking a picture of every wall. I was just waiting for something to go wrong and the engineer to say, hey, you're not where you say you are on floor, 4, room 423. So I figured all these pictures were going to come in handy. I don't know why I just went down that rabbit hole. Greater point being, I'm walking the whole job at least once a week, sometimes more depending on how busy it was. And I would see every worker. Now this jerk foreman, he did all those things that every foreman has to do great. Watching the schedule, looking ahead, knows what tasks are coming related to that schedule, has tools and materials related to those tasks cached and ready to roll. So he's ready to lay out people as they need new work. And I'll tell you what, wow, that job was one of the few jobs in the last 10 years that I have walked and never caught a single person not working. And that is crazy. Think about an 8-hour day and an average employee. There's a certain amount of time that you're going to go use the bathroom, that you're going to, need to check some paperwork, or, stop and set something down. I mean, it's only natural for me as a project manager. When I walk a job, I expect to find, everybody working most of the time, and I expect to find a couple people here and there visiting the plumber, occasionally. That stuff's going to happen naturally. You're going to talk to the plumber for 10 minutes about the football game, at some point during the day. As long as that's not what's going on all day, every day, and I don't chronically run into that, it's part of working, right? This job was crazy. Never caught anybody, and I walked every floor for probably like 6 months during the height of that job. Never caught anybody just staring at their phone, twiddling on the phone, posting something to Instagram. Now everybody was just like working. And that is what you get out of a jerk foreman. Now those people may not be happy to be communicated to in the jerky way, because how a foreman lays out the stuff, that's what determines whether they're a jerk or not. And I know that foreman was also marching every day because he knew when I was, it could be that he was marching because he knew I was coming and told everybody, stay busy, Abbott's coming, rah, rah, rah. But versus, another foreman that we had, who I would say he's the nice guy foreman, employees would tend to take advantage of that. The guys that would tend to let that conversation with the plumber go on for a half hour. And the foreman wasn't doing a diligent job of marching the job zone and nipping that in the bud, So not having the emotional callousness, tool set, I don't know how to say it as a leader, to say, hey, come on, guys, back to work, The jerk foreman would be, hey, come on, guys, get back to work. The nice guy hopefully says, hey, come on, let's get something done, guys. But point is, there's pros and there's cons. Now, people like working for the nice guy foreman. So if the nice guy foreman can take a little bit of the leadership tool set from the jerk foreman, and the jerk foreman could take a little bit of the tool set of how to communicate from the nice guy foreman, it sure would be nice. But I can see the pros and the cons, man. I can hire 10 people and just throw them at the jerk foreman, and some of them might quit, but he's going to get that job done with whoever I throw at him, and he's going to tell me who I need to fire quickly. And so that's, but I don't like, I definitely would not hang out with the guy on the weekend because he's a jerk. Whereas the nice guy foreman, people love working for him, especially my own internal crew. See, here's the thing. Okay, when we talk about pros and cons, the con to the jerk foreman is self-starters, good employees that you want to keep. They end up not wanting to work for your company because the jerk foreman rubs them the wrong way. But mediocre employees that maybe weren't going to make the cut for a 2-year run anyway, the jerk foreman will keep them working for you, and he'll smoke them at the end of the job. The nice guy foreman, as long as you're handing them those good, productive employees, there's good camaraderie on the job, and they get the job done. But as soon as you send the employees that tend to push the boundaries on slacking to the nice guy foreman, the job starts tanking because the nice guy foreman just doesn't have enough chutzpah to stay on these guys and say, let's get by. I don't know why I keep clapping my hands. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so I don't know if hopefully I articulated that well enough that leadership skill has some basic qualities, okay? Leadership skills means, and I touched on this a couple times, and let me just hit it again. You're the thinker on the job. Your job is to be ahead of everybody. Your job is not installing. Now, if you got a 1 or 2 man crew, maybe your job's going to be installing, but it's your lowest tier priority, okay? Your number one priority when you're the leader on the job is to be looking at the schedule, understanding how your work is going to come up to bat in relation to that schedule. And what I mean by that is, are you roughing in walls? What's the schedule say you're doing next week? What's the schedule say you're doing in 3 weeks? Are you roughing in walls? Are you doing underground? Know what you're doing. If I go out to a job and I ask somebody what they're doing, if I ask the foreman, what are you guys working on next week? Better know, or you're not doing your job. And you can be hedging your bet, too. You can say, well, the general schedule says I'm supposed to be doing underground, but I've noticed there's not any excavation equipment out here yet, so I think we're going to be prefab and hangars or something. Better have an answer, though, because that's the foreman's job. That's the foreman's job. Understanding what you're doing coming down you need to be looking at what's coming down the pipe. And then you need to have the tools and materials ready for that job. That's universal leadership requirement, okay? Now, how do you, once you have this information, that's bookworm information, right? It doesn't matter whether you're a jerk foreman or a nice guy foreman or what your approach is. That's the stuff you need to know. Now comes time to communicate that stuff, okay? Now, when you communicate that stuff, there are ways that work. And like I said, being a leader is kind of a dynamic situation. Some people you're going to find aren't going to jive with you. Some people are going to hate you, and you're never going to be able to lead them. But for the most part, I have found success in, first of all, treat everybody like they're adults. Be firm but fair. Talk to people straight. Be firm but fair. And, allow people to provide input. Get team buy-in to the direction you're going, okay? Treat everybody like they're adults. Nobody likes it when they're talked down to like a kid, okay? There's a lot of pride in the construction industry about we're already at a disadvantage. We didn't go to college, and we're not doctors, and we're not lawyers. And so we like to wear the dirt on our clothes as a badge of honor, and talking down to me ain't going to get you very far at all, okay? And I think that's common throughout the construction industry. I think we all feel that way. So first of all, assume that I'm smart. Don't, and let me just side chain for just a second. I know when I'm leading, a lot of times when I'm laying out a task, I start with the very basic stuff that probably everybody knows. I just don't say it in a way that I don't think you know it. I usually preface it with, I'm going to go over everything, whether you know it or not, because I just want to make sure I said everything, and I don't want to assume people know things, and some people know things and some people don't. I don't want to go there, so I'm just going to explain everything. So if you know this or if you've heard it before, just be patient till I get to the part that's new to you or something, So there you go. The point is that I'm not treating them like kids by telling them how to use a hacksaw to cut a piece of conduit if you never have it. Anyway, point being, treat people like they're adults, and listen to input. So if somebody says, well, why don't we do it this way? Two-way communication builds team feeling, builds camaraderie, right? People want to be listened to. So if somebody has a good idea of an alternate method, I encourage you to hear them out. Doesn't mean you have to do it that way. And just because somebody has an alternate method, if they're a team member and you hear them out and honestly consider it and give honest feedback, that should be enough. Now, when does it go too far, right? You're the leader. You got to make the call. And right or wrong, you got to make the call about how you're going to go about doing something. So let's say you have a task and you're going to dig a ditch and you're saying, okay, guys, we're going to dig this ditch and here's how we're going to do it. And an employee says, well, I got an idea. How about we do it this way? Maybe it's not a way that I want to do it. And so I might say, I like where you're going, thinking outside the box and trying to improve, the way it's going to go. But I'm going to stick with my plan on this one, And that way, that person feels heard on their idea, even if you don't go their way, and keep them encouraged to keep sending you ideas, because you don't know it all. The electrical industry is way too big. From small wires to big wires to 1 volt to 1,000,000 volts, there's from motors to controls to security to nobody knows it all. There's going to come times you need input. And here's the thing, you need to feel like a team, because you're not going to be right all the time. That is the nature of the biz. When you're a leader, you need to make the decision and keep the puck moving down the ice and keep your team around you. That is the nature of the business. Do not do the paralysis by analysis thing. People historically have always looked to me as a leader because I offer a decision. And I'll tell you right now, I've got a good batting average, but I ain't always right. But the key is I seek input and I'm honest about, what I think we ought to do and why I think we ought to do it. And if you offer me an idea and I don't think that we ought to do it that way, I say I appreciate your input, but I think I'm going to go with my idea for now. And if they get butthurt about that and don't like that I'm never using their idea, if we eventually part ways because of that, that's the way it goes. Over the course of time, people have looked to me in my company to be the axe man, to do all the firing, okay? Why would that happen? Because people are uncomfortable having difficult conversations, and I get it. I don't like having difficult conversations either, but the best way to have difficult conversations when you're not accepting somebody's idea. I don't know why I keep slapping my hands together. When you're not accepting somebody's idea, or you need to tell somebody you need to pick up the pace, or you need to tell somebody you can't be late anymore, is just to be straightforward with them. That's how you would want the information delivered to you, right? Most people in the construction industry understand that for most people it's a 9 months a year type of job, and you're going to probably work for a lot of contractors. You are not, as a leader, as a foreman, you are not taking bread right out of the mouths of their babies, okay? You're not destroying them when you have to lay them off. And I wouldn't expand on it that much when I'm laying somebody off either. I would just, hey, we've come to the end of the road. I enjoyed working with you, and hope we get an opportunity to work with you again and lay them off. So, being straight but fair, treating people like adults. Don't hide or not tell them, that being afraid to confront somebody that their lunch is running on to 40 minutes. I'm getting a little bit all over the place here. So let me try to pull it back here. Let me take a sip of my coffee and try to pull it back and realign myself here. So getting that buy-in from everybody is really important as a leader, because you're going to be wrong sometimes, is where I was trying to go before I got off path there. When you're wrong and you have buy-in from your team, it doesn't matter that you were wrong. Everybody shrugs their shoulders and thinks, I thought that was going to work too, and you move on to the next thing. One problem a lot of foremen have is they never want to be wrong. That's a problem just people have, right? People don't want to admit they're wrong, ever. And part of being a great leader is not only admitting you're wrong, but getting everybody on the same path as you and ending up wrong, and then keeping their trust in you while you pivot and get on the new path. It's not always going to work out right for you, but the paralysis, not responding to a question, is not leadership. Obviously, if you're continually wrong, that's just terrible leadership. getting everybody's buy-in on why you're doing it the way you're doing it is good leadership. One time I was doing a shutdown, and I had a big crew, and we were replacing a substation, and I can't remember what was. I'm trying to remember the specific thing that was going on, but I remember an apprentice was. We had a certain amount of time. We had to wire up this whole substation, and an apprentice was like metering something. I just remember having a conflict with this apprentice, and he says, "Hey, shouldn't we check something?" Oh, this story's terrible because I can't remember where I was going, but basically I overrode him. I told him, "We're not doing that right now. We got to have the power back on in 4 hours, and that's inconsequential to getting the power back on. That's something we can do later." And he wanted to start arguing with me that we should do it right now. And it got to a point where it says, "I'm making the call as the foreman on the job. This is what we're doing. If you have a problem with it, you can pack up your bags and take off, man. We'll check that thing later. I appreciate the input, but we're not doing that right now." And I think if he would have said one more thing, I would have told him it's not voluntary anymore to go ahead and pack your bags and head home, and we'll talk about if you're still an employee tomorrow, because you got to get the job done. But I think that's one of the most difficult things about being a leader is when people are challenging your direction, and just treating people like adults and being firm but fair when people are even challenging your direction is the hardest part about being a leader. And all I can tell you is what I just said. Treat people like adults and be firm but fair. I'm going to do more videos on leadership skills and how to deal with problems and how to deal with problem people. But that's part of the hardest part, right? I mean, running a job, looking at the schedule, making sure you know what's coming down the pipe for you, having those tools and materials in place. If you're doing that, you're doing awesome. And the next level is your own, I wouldn't use the word charisma, but your own ability and communication skills for getting people to do those tasks and how you deal with people that don't want to do those tasks. And I'm working on a book. I got one coming out this year, but I got another one coming out next year called The Low Stress Foreman. And it's going to talk about, your expectations as a leader. What kind of expectations should you have on employees? And what's a fair expectation of them? Because in the construction industry especially, we don't use good measuring sticks on our employees. Like, I don't know a single foreman that I could say, what's a reasonable amount of time for a journeyman to install 100 receptacles? Any takers? Anybody want to jump in the comment section and tell me what they think is a reasonable amount of time? The only measuring stick we have in the construction industry that I see people using today, except for like one company I can think of, every other company, do it as fast as you can. That's the way we've been doing it for 100 years, and the construction industry has changed wildly since then. So commitment to good leadership is also commitment to improving your processes, right? This Foreman coaching channel is going to show you how to run work in a process type method, which means like the way you go about doing everything is in a defined process, and you commit to self-measurement as you go through the different steps of running a job. And the self-measurement provides a feedback loop to improve certain steps of the process. Okay, now that might sound kind of word salad for a second, but my point is the opposite of that is having no tool in your tool set except for go as fast as you can go. Because you know what happens then is you arrive at the finish line and you have no idea how you got there. No idea how you got there. So when you try to rinse and repeat that on job number 2, when you arrive at the finish line, maybe you made more money than last time, maybe you made less money than last time, but you have no idea why. So consistency, being a great leader, is a lot about being consistent in your skills. And being consistently profitable is possible, but you got to have a process to how you run your work and you have to have a commitment to self-measurement. Okay, if those elements are in place, then as a leader, you are laying out the work, you're self-measuring as work is getting completed, if it was per expectations, and all that will start to build confidence in your own ability to run work profitably. When you don't use any of those skill sets, you just, like I said, you just arrive at the finish line. Sometimes you made money, sometimes you didn't make money. Was it the estimator's good job? Was it the project manager's buyout? Was it the foreman's good leading of the job? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Do it again next time because he got a good batting average. We don't know what he does. He's like a leprechaun. You just put him on jobs and he's got the good luck. Didn't mean to offend any leprechauns out there, but if you are a leprechaun, call me. I got 3 wishes. Is it leprechauns you get wishes from? Anyway, Foreman Coaching Channel. I'm here to tell you about how to run work. And if you got questions, drop them in the comments below, and I will try to address them and post new videos. Expect a new video every week, teaching you how to be a bomb foreman and showing you pitfalls and traps to avoid as a good leader. And hoping to get some live chats going here pretty soon so we can interact and we can talk about the problems that we run into as foremen in the construction industry with employees drawing specifications, companies we work for. I'm trying to provide a platform here where we can get together and we can talk about what goes wrong and how to improve our industry. I'm out. See you guys next episode.